Why then, if he won that debate, wasn't he successful? Well, the next part of the box he's in is gerrymandering. The House of Representatives is gerrymandered, so almost every district, there are only, in the 435 seats, there are about 50 that are in play in any given election cycle, often many fewer than 50. And that meant the firm Republicans and the firm Democrats don't have to compromise, because there's no chance they're going to win. So if Obama went to the American people and did what Maureen Dowd wanted, and he did, didn't make any difference. There are no votes to be won by doing that. Now, I'm describing a situation. In fact, I will give you the poll here. 65% said it was a good idea for the federal government to give aid to the states to avoid layoffs of teachers. 80% favored increase in infrastructure, and 65% favored raising taxes on those with incomes over $1 million. 65% was the minimum support for Obama's policies. In a normal political time, that would have produced easy bipartisan agreement in Washington. We're not in a normal political time. To that, you have to add the flood of money that came after Citizens United. And now I want to mention the last two parts of the box that Obama was in rhetorically. It was an incredibly fragile economic situation, especially for the banks. Early in 2009, some of you will remember that Obama was strongly criticized because he didn't demonize the bankers. And he didn't. The bankers, some of them took the ridiculous payments from the fund that actually came in the Bush administration. And Obama did not go after them rhetorically. Why didn't he do that? He didn't know how strong the banks were. And if President of the United States starts attacking the banking sector, he risks destabilizing that sector. This wasn't hidden from people. In fact, the President himself said in a July 22nd, 2011 town hall, asked why he hadn't been more optimistic, why more hopeful. He said, that's always a balance for a president. On the one hand, you want to project confidence and optimism. And remember, in that first year, people weren't sure whether the banking system was going to melt down and whether we were going into a Great Depression. And so it was important for me to let the American people know we're going to be all right. We're going to be able to get through this. The Tea Party in 2010 portrayed Obama as selling out to the bankers. But Obama couldn't attack the bankers strongly, because a president has a responsibility to think of the entire American people and all the economy. And finally, in the rhetorical box I'm describing, there's one final factor. The economy was bad. Presidents aren't very successful in persuading people when the economy's bad. We all now remember President Reagan as the great communicator. We remember Morning in America and the incredible re-election he won in 1984. In 1982, a majority of the American people did not think he should run for re-election. The economy was bad. The great communicator wasn't very great until the economy came back. So from the Georgetown speech through all the way through 2011, Obama is incredibly constrained. Gets even worse after the 2010 midterms. But I'm going to tell you there's a move in this, because it goes, what did I say? It goes from hope to audacity. And the move happened after the debt ceiling debate agreement was made. Because suddenly Obama was not constrained to reach out to the people in Congress who weren't going to vote for him at all. Suddenly, Obama was able to say what he wanted to say about the banking sector and the rich. And suddenly, Obama found his voice. Now, I have something I want to tell you, because this doesn't happen. It happens once every 100 years in my home state. Once every 100 years, something important and progressive happens in Kansas. At the beginning of the 20th century, it was Teddy Roosevelt talking in Osawatomie, Kansas. In 2011, it was President Obama also talking in Osawatomie, Kansas. After the debt ceiling, what does he do? He suddenly out of the rhetorical box, and that allows him to put out a new message. In Osawatomie, and mostly in policy terms, he kept saying the same things he was saying before. He defends moderate, pragmatic liberalism. And it's pretty centrist. Listen to what he said here. Now, this is going to be me for a second. When the man who supposedly hates the free market. Obama said of Teddy Roosevelt, he believed then what we know is true today, that the free market is the greatest force for economic progress in human history. Doesn't sound much like a socialist, does he? But then he said something else. He said, we also know that the unregulated free market is built on a principle of free license. He later called that you're on your own economics. And boy, I think a lot of people have felt like we were on our own the last 3 years. He observed ironically that for saying similar things, Teddy Roosevelt was called a radical. He was called a socialist. He was even called a communist. And then Obama called for fairness. He said we have to rethink the tax system. And then he went on to say something really, really important about what I, in some writing, have called the communitarian American dream. There really are two versions of the American dream. The American dream is about things getting a little bit better for the next generation. In one version, that of Ronald Reagan and conservatives, it's the individual pulling himself or herself up by their bootstraps. It's about the individual. In the communitarian version, it's about the individual striving hard, but maybe getting a little help from the community. Maybe there's a program that gives you a scholarship, or maybe there's a loan program that gives you a chance to start a business. Or maybe in hard times you even had to take food stamps for a while so you could go on. That's Obama's variant of the American dream. And he had talked about that very memorably in 2004 when he said people don't expect government to solve all their problems, but they sense deep in their bones that with just a slight change in priorities, we can make sure that every child in America has a decent shot at life. That's the same thing he said at Osawatomie. He said, we're greater together than we are on our own. He said, these aren't democratic values. These aren't 1% values or 99% values. They're American values.
Now, fortunately, that's not a future that we have to accept. Because there's another view about how we build a strong middle class in this country. A view that's truer to our history. A vision that's been embraced in the past by people of both parties for more than 200 years. It's not a view that we should somehow turn back technology or put up walls around America. It's not a view that says we should punish profit or success or pretend that government knows how to fix all of society's problems. It is a view that says, in America, we are greater together. When everyone engages in fair play and everybody gets a fair shot and everybody does their fair share.
Suddenly the theme was fairness. And suddenly there was a villain. The villain was the rich person, the greedy person who didn't want to give something for everybody. And suddenly Obama's message started to resonate. In the polling makes it very clear that Obama's message started to resonate with that at that moment. And it's not just the polling, but he announced the theme that became the dominant theme of the election campaign. The New York Times said the speech was the most potent blow the president has struck against the economic theory at the core of the opposition. You also know that Obama hit a theme that was working by the response of some of the conservative pundits. Remember, this is the speech where Obama said we should raise the tax rate on people making over $250,000 from 35% to 39.6%. That's all. That's what it was in the Clinton years, when the economy created 21 million jobs. That's what he said. To that, Charles Krauthammer said, the speech was populism so crude that it channels not Teddy Roosevelt so much as Hugo Chavez, the dictator in charge of Venezuela. And other commentators went further than that. Jeffrey Cooner compared it, said Obama's politics was European-style socialism similar to that of Lenin. You know when conservative commentators are comparing you to Lenin that you have gotten under their skin. That shift in values from hope to audacity energized the campaign. He immediately went from the low 40s to about 50% in popularity, and that created the movement that we have seen up until the convention. But while there was still a problem with this, and the problem is that while this was a perfect message to frame opposition, the hope was gone. He was just one more partisan politician. And so in the convention, something else happened. Now, the conventional wisdom is the Democrats had a lot more successful convention than the Republicans. There weren't any memorable speeches on the Republican convention. Actually, that's not true. Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, was really, I thought he was kind of a young Ronald Reagan in the speech. And for me to say that's a lot. I think a lot of President Reagan. There were a lot of awkward moments. Clint Eastwood, I think, for those of you who watched, was not at his best, and we will never see an empty chair in American politics in quite the same way. And there is also a consensus the Democratic convention went well. Michelle Obama and President Clinton have gotten an awful lot of praise, and I agree with that. But the pundits have missed two things. First, it wasn't just Michelle Obama, and it wasn't just President Clinton. There were any number of I saw more really strong speeches in one night than I usually see in both party conventions in 1 year. More very strong. Democrats are angry, and they are passionate. It's because of the message that began at Osawatomie. That's why they feel that way, because I think Obama is fighting back. And it was also because Obama, in the conclusion of his speech, found a way to take us back to hope. Most of the speech was just the themes I've talked about, some of the themes of the communitarian American dream, a defense of the policies of his administration so far. People said he didn't announce anything new because he's had 4 years to govern. He instead decided to say, not as Reagan said, it's morning in America, but the dawn is about to break, is what he said, and these policies are working. But in the conclusion, he gave us a little bit of hope again.
But as I stand here tonight, I have never been more hopeful about America. Not because I think I have all the answers, not because I'm naive about the magnitude of our challenges. I'm hopeful because of you.
Some people criticize that. But what Obama saw was, in American politics, if we're going to have real change, it's got to be because of the citizenry. And the only place to find hope, certainly wasn't in Washington, was within the actions of ordinary people. In those words, suddenly Obama had pulled together the themes of the community, of hope, and of audacity. And since that moment, his campaign has gone straight up in the polls. I'm not saying he's right on the policy. You know, I have views as a citizen, you don't care about that. But rhetorically, that worked. And think of the box the man was in. People say he hasn't been very effective. Even given the economic situation, his polling is a little bit above 50%. Even given all the opposition, think about that foundation. Did he get health care? Yes. Did he get education through the stimulus? Yes. Did he get financial reform? Yes. Did he get energy? He got some with it. He didn't get the deficit, but he got 4 of the other 5 points. You know, people say he's not nearly as good as Clinton, but try to think about what Clinton accomplished in his years. Really, I think he's been incredibly effective in a very, very difficult rhetorical environment. Now, I told you at the beginning that I was going to have some broader conclusions about what this tells us about our rhetoric. I think the first of them is pretty obvious. Our system is weighted against change. When people say, how come we can't change on major problems, and I agree with that. There are lots of problems where there are simple solutions the experts are agreed on. Well, the answer is us. We've created a system that doesn't let us change very quickly, that makes it really hard to adapt to the problems of the moment. And frankly, the polling I said, both on our knowledge about the issues and our willingness to sacrifice, I can summarize as we don't know much and we won't want to give anything away. We're for anything that doesn't cost us money and it taxes somebody else. We're not doing very well. So there are lots of failures in the American system. But I want to say one more thing. I want to tell you about, this is a theory of tactical and strategic presidents. I think there are really two kinds of presidents. Political scientists think there are only one kind of president. They're tactical presidents. Tactical presidents adapt to the moment. They come up with new policy ideas. Bill Clinton is the perfect example of a tactical president. Suddenly there was Republican opposition on social issues, so he proposed school uniforms in schools. You know, he's segregating some same-sex schools. He knew it wouldn't pass. He knew it wouldn't do anything if it did pass, but it was tactical and responded to Newt Gingrich. Strategic presidents aren't like that. Strategic presidents have big ideas. They stick to those big ideas. They say them again and again and again. They tweak their message. It often doesn't work. The two prominent recent examples of strategic presidents are Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama. Strategic presidents have many, many losses. Reagan got killed in the 1982 midterms. Obama got killed in the 2010 midterms. It's too early to say yet if Obama will have the same long-term impact of Reagan. But the last 25 years have been the age of Reagan because of his incredible skill with words. And by the way, he wrote a lot of his own material. If you ever hear anybody say Reagan was a nitwit, you say that's not true. He was a good writer, and he was an even better editor, and he was very knowledgeable, especially about the Soviets. He was really a smart guy. That's a statement. By the way, just as an aside, I've spent 20 years telling people that Reagan was a lot more pragmatic and moderate than people realize, and a lot smarter than people realize. I found that sweet spot where my academic research makes everyone angry at me. But it's still true. Barack Obama is a strategic president. And when we think of the arc of his ideas, I think we have to say to Maureen Dowd, he hasn't inspired us much, but that's more about us than it is about him. And it's a lot better that he was more Spocky than Rocky, because we didn't need a Rocky in the presidency. We needed somebody calm who'd think things through. You can disagree with him or not, but the arc of his presidency moves from hope that could not be sustained to building a new foundation, to finding himself in an utter rhetorical box, to getting out of that box and finding audacity in, of all places, Kansas, and finally moving back to hope, finding it in all of you. Thank you very much.